Well, welcome to the Story of the Apprentice podcast. You like that noise? It's the Story of the Apprentice podcast, a podcast where we talk about D&D and storytelling and other stuff. And it's the story of, oh, I hate that. The story of Tucker Patterson becoming a professional GM, which started officially today. Okay,
Did.
real quick.
Hmm.
So I've turned my gain on my interface all the way up. And to be fair, it's overloading mostly because I'm yelling or talking loud, but because I'm a very quiet person. But Zoom
Hmm.
also has forced me into this position because it slams my levels all the way down. I can't adjust the input on Zoom. There's like a little slider and I move it up and it just elastic like goes back like a little rubber band, and
Hmm.
it didn't always do that. But I can like hear myself buzzing, but this is my only chance to not be fucking quiet because I like listen to little clips of the podcast
Hmm.
back.
I'm always so much louder than
He's
you,
so much
which
louder.
is crazy because like when I do pretty much anything else, like if I'm playing games on Discord, maybe it's Discord specifically, but typically when I'm doing that, every like people that I'm talking to are like, your mic is very quiet.
Well, it's an internal setting on Zoom that adjusts it, and for some reason for me it's fixed. Anyways, I'm Jesse T. William, and with me, as always, I may have spoiled it a little bit, but my co-host,
Tucker Patterson,
Bam,
little
um,
man.
little man,
What does the T
Tucker.
stand for again?
Oh, it's so story of my name, real quick. So I was born Jesse Thomas Dixon, and then I
Mhm.
was adopted, and I was Jesse Thomas William Giles, and then my family started being really shit on my dad's side, and so I became Jesse T. William. And so that's why it's not Williams, because most I imagine most like last names that are really would just
It's
be Williams.
Williams, yeah.
Yeah, just William. I don't know
Mm.
if I'll ever officially change it, but I might. Who knows?
Mm.
Um, anyways, this is again this this podcast. Tucker, why are we here?
We're just talking about D&D.
We're here to absolutely do that. Um, um,
And
oh,
not whatever we talked about last time that wasn't D&D by the end of it.
it was an okay. I feel like we were both tired. I feel like two things. I feel like that was not our best episode. I feel like in fact the last
The
episode,
episode before it, I think, was really good though.
yeah, I feel like 3 and 4. I just looked through a bit of 3. I was like, this is pretty good. Um, but episode 4 I feel like it's pretty good. Episode 5, I feel like I had a very, very strong um sense of an idea like 4 months ago. And I
Mm.
4 months ago I was like perfectly able to articulate it. And then as I was like watching myself talk back on it, I was like, oh, these thoughts are decayed a little bit. Anyways, I were here, and also, I realized today, it's the first kind of I think topic. Let's talk about like I don't know, DM brain and burnout and the effect of
Uh-huh.
sleep on and eating on a healthy brain, because it's possible. It's entirely within the realm of possibility that the two of us do
Or,
not have the best sleep or eating habits.
no.
And part of the reason for that is that this job for me is a lot of time. Um it's not like 12-hour days straight, but it is work that is divided up for 3 days of the week over 12 hours, and then 2 days a week less, and then the other 2 days of the week I'm still doing stuff all the time. So anyways, I it's really easy for me to slip. And I was running a session this on Wednesday. It was a makeup session. It was rescheduled because I was having a bad time um, 2 weeks ago, and I there was kind of like a couple people missing in the session. I was like, we'll just cancel it, and I'll sleep in, and I did that, and that was a good day. But so it was rescheduled for this Wednesday. It was the only session I had, and I think it was still a good session. But there's something I noticed where I was so tired and I was so out of it, and I got up, didn't eat anything, straight just ran the session. And me as a DM was like disconnected from the player experience. So what I
Mm.
mean by this, we were talking in one of the last two episodes about how there's kind of like reciprocity in the DM player relationship of you collaborate and work on the story, and you hand the players your world, and your players say this, I want to do this or whatever. A bunch of specific examples that you can pretend I just said, and you take that and you build something on it, and it goes back and forth. And moments to moment in um, the throughout a session, when players, for example, go like, oh, I don't know if this is safe, I don't know what to do, I'm scared, you hopefully both like recognize that and also feel it and kind of like lean into it and feed into it.
Mm.
And I was doing that in the session, I think, but I really like in like my heart, I was like super, I don't know, I was just fucking disconnected. I just didn't feel like anything to me. And at the end of the session, I was like, I didn't know if that was a good session. I, I, there were moments when the players were like laughing, and there were moments where the players were, um, like seemingly having a good time. And I set up, a thing and whatever. And I think the players were genuinely scared because they had a bunch of conversations about like their plans of like who's sacrificing themselves to get out of this potential situation. And I think part of the I think there's also a flaw in my GMing style, which is I don't like um if I'm reflecting on the session, maybe I could lean into that more because immediately I don't like committing too hard to tension, and I don't like doing false tension. And so I was setting up this scenario for a crossover. I was setting up this like as a party, this is unwinnable because another party is going to come in and save you. And so like I think there was just a disconnect in my brain of like this. I technically know that I'm actually not genuinely putting you in a dangerous scenario, although it feels like
Mm.
it, and it still felt like it to the players. But I don't know. I feel like I bungled something. But anyways, I feel like that was largely. I just was so tired and out of it, and that's a problem.
Mm.
I don't know if there's anything for you to jump
Well,
onto there. I just
I
kind of
have like
rambled.
I have a whole like a ritual, a pre-game ritual that I do that I think is like my key to not having that happen. Not that it's not ever happened because I've on occasion missed the pre-game ritual, which does like seem I don't know why I started doing this. It like mm, I cleared my throat and I at the same time, which really annoys me because I clear my throat a lot. I've done it since I was a child. It's a tick. My mom makes fun of me for it a little bit, but I did it twice. I did them really close together, and it was made my brain upset. I don't. I started doing this when I started doing Cursive Strahd like 10 months ago, 11 months ago, and it wasn't like intentional, but I've noticed the difference. Um, is that I typically before every game I take a shower. It doesn't matter if I really actually need to be clean. It's just sort of like something that makes me feel more present or like and not as groggy. If I come into a session groggy at all on like an emotional level, physically, if I'm tired, then I'm gonna have that problem. I'm not gonna be really engaged with my players, but I can usually kind of avoid that if I hit that shower first. If I make sure first of all I have to be fed, shower, I'm good. I can kind of jump into it. But there is like a certain part of it that is just like my headspace before a game and being like kind of aware of that. if I go into a game like of a headspace of like kind of not wanting to do it because I'm tired or because of this or that, I'm generally not gonna have an easy time with it. But for the most part, I do really good about going into games with good energy levels and really engaging and present with my players. Um, although I do think sometimes it's a little party like related, like the specific people I'm playing with, but for the most part, I do typically have an easier time with that. Um, the unfortunate part is usually when I eat before D&D, it's because I'm like, I have to eat. This is my first time eating today. I didn't even finish my point 0.5 meal.
That's I that's I mean, if you need to take bites,
No.
just kind of out of range.
I'm okay. I'm living. I'm here. I'm
Okay.
vibing.
Okay. The other thing I kind of had on my mind, and I'll make a smooth transition. So I think one of the things that helps me get into my game, and I don't think I'm not sure if this had too much of an impact on the session I ran on Wednesday, but having a map in front of me. So I have these map tiles. It's going to disappear when I bring it up on the screen. Never mind. They're just in reach, but I realized it's just going to look like whoop. Oh, it's kind of there. Anyways,
Oh no, it's not.
for a second. Um, so for me, I have this strange thing where I when I look at my map or the map tile, not this big map, but the map tile,
Mhm.
because it's on such a large scale, you can kind of get a sense, like, for example, every centimeter is like 50.8 kilometers. We don't need to get into the math of how I know that. Just that I do that's a certainty. Um, but what am I saying here? Ugh. When I look at my map, I feel like I can get a sense of where I am in the world. I can better visualize it. It's just a thing that it's just a grounding point, I suppose, to my world. And maybe that's like an interesting idea of like grounding yourself in the world, like leaving the regular human space behind and like putting on like the GM costume and like
I agree. I
yeah.
had I would actually say that because I had messaged you the other day and I was like, oh, I feel like I leveled up my Monday game.
Yeah.
And
Let's
I think that was like a big part of it actually. Um not that I hadn't done it before, but I feel like I have now easier access to the thing that allows me to further immerse myself in the world I'm putting my players in and forget about all that other shit. And that's kind of what happened Monday, which was a very fun experience for me.
this is my GMing ring now.
Jimmy.
I've had this for like 3 years. This is actually an interesting thing. Doesn't quite fit. Oh, that's better fit. There we go. This is my spell casting finger. Ooh, look at that. Um, that's I actually like that idea. Anyways, sorry, I was looking for that as you were saying the thing, and then I had to show it to you. You're talking about leveling up your experience, and so sorry, I complete my so I was here. You know when I was talking 20 minutes ago,
And I, yeah,
and you were like reading something and listening to me, and then on the other side you had heard neither things.
yeah,
um
that retained
uh
absolutely nothing.
that happened to me because I just went through this whole experience. So the reason what just happened to me here, and then we're gonna circle back around. What just happened to me? So initially, I would what I would do for like my home game players is I would buy little trinkets. That'd be like a magic item. So this was like a ring of Dimension Door, and I
Mm.
remember it being like the player who I gave it to, who's still my friends to this day. Those are the players who I played with. Actually, that's not entirely true. Um, anyways, so I was thinking about the player who I gave it to and his character. It just appeared in my mind, and then like the kind of stories, and like I got this ring when I went to Edinburgh. I went on this Europe trip, and Edinburgh had this little market that was very cool, and I was like, oh, I'll get these little things. And so my brain went through all these processes and I put it on and I was like, oh yeah, that'll work. And then I looked back
Mm.
at you and I was like, huh, you were saying something. I remember where you started, which was saying you're through your Monday game, something something. And so I feel like, and it was
Mm.
something to do with grounding a little bit. Anyways, could you
Well, yeah. The general thought was is that I had told you that I feel like I like leveled up on my Monday game. And I talked with my players afterwards, and even they were like, "Yeah, that was different." And I was like, "Yes." But the my cat dude is being the fucking awful right
we're
now.
having interruptions. We're
Yeah,
having
she. I
challenges.
want you
This
to know
is a
she was so.
CR3 episode.
I was expecting her to be so annoying during the session I just ran, and like just slept through the whole thing. And I was like, oh, she's like being good today. No, Jesse's here. It's time to be fucking awful.
Fuck
She's
cats. We'll explain that later. Please continue. While
um
I still know what you're talking about.
the but like part of it I think was that I definitely like had like grounded myself in the setting a little bit more. Like I felt I gained easier access to the thing that allows me to pull myself out of stupid Tucker world, and completely leave that behind. Not that I had never had access to that before, but it felt more like I can reach out and grab it now, which was really, really nice to experience. I felt very satisfied with myself after that um, session. I couldn't think of the word. So I definitely think that that's like a big factor, the grounding yourself in it, because that session definitely went very differently for me, and I think a lot of it has to do with that.
Okay. So I did hear everything you said. It was just, it was
Obviously,
already kind of in my brain. And I was looking for, honestly, how do I phrase this without sounding, I had assumed that there is something more specific that I had missed. I was
no.
like, was there but like what I mean, I I think it'd be interesting to try to explore that. Like what makes the like a I don't know, like grounding points, or like what leads to the experience of being sort of in the zone in your setting. So like I know you've been doing a lot of work in your setting. I'm assuming it's the same one that no, it's Witchlight, isn't it?
No, this is the Witchlight game, yeah.
Mm. So
Which I
what
say is a little arguably a little harder to like when you're running something
yeah.
pre-written to really soak yourself into.
Um yeah, like what do you feel, like changed, or like, or is there anything specific that you found was like the latch key, or like the like cornerstone,
There
or like other.
was a moment. It started with like so most of the session went on as normal. And then we hit like this halfway point when I was done running. I put my hand out and she thinks that's an invitation. It's not. Um, I considered making it look like I threw her harder than I did just for the bit, but I was like, no, I don't abuse my animals. Uh,
You did
but
throw an object at your cat in one of these last episodes,
I did, but
so
it wasn't
the
a
cat
big
didn't even
object. It was
notice,
just
but
he's stupid. He doesn't know anything. He didn't care. And the only reason that she cares when I do it is because she's afraid of everything. No, she's not even afraid of everything. She just doesn't want things to touch her. It's like gross. It's beneath her. It's lowly. Um, but so most of the session like went on as normal. I'm like trying to like pinpoint what exactly was different. I kind of knew it was going to be different going into it. I had like thought about the way that I like present information to players. Um, Especially because so I've been thinking about this in my Witchlight game and in my Friday games. I'm playing with friends. And so there was always kind of a level of like, if I'm not spot on, I can be kind of silly with it sometimes. And I can explain things. Sometimes I go, I don't know, it's a fucking door. Shut up to my players. You know what I mean? And even though my Witchlight game is a game that I play with my friends, there was like an active thought of like, I'm going to start doing this professionally. What does it look like when I do the work? I've always been one of those people. Something that was told to me a lot growing up that I feel like is applicable is I was always one of those people where like a teacher would look at like an assignment I'd done and I'd get like a B. And I would look at that and know that I did minimal work on that. I winged it. I did that 30 minutes before class and I still got a good grade. And I've even had like, teachers tell me like, whoa, can you imagine what this would look like if you put effort into it? And I was like, crazy, I'm not doing that. Uh, and so that it was kind of like a little bit of a moment like that where like I know that I'm good enough when I'm kind of like not doing as much work or I'm kind of just like not as into it. And there was like this thought of like, okay, like let's really put the effort in. Like let's really put the effort in. And it paid off. The characters really enjoyed it. Uh the players. And so there's this like moment halfway through. A I I think that part of it was just like the experience, right? Because there was this moment where I was playing an NPC and how do I explain this? My NPCs are they're different people, you know what I mean? It's easy to tell they're different people, but I'd not played anything like too wildly outside of my comfort zone or like really gotten into it. And you know this from the Sunday games is that I was kind of used to playing with people who are a little timid when it comes to the role playing aspects. And so that was something that was kind of alien to me. And not in the sense that I wanted to do it, and that's where I knew I would have more fun. But playing with people who weren't as into it can feel like really awkward and weird sometimes. And having now played in the Sunday game where everybody is like crying all the time, I think put a little bit more confidence in me to just say fuck it. Like, who cares if I look a little silly, you know? Um, and I'm trying to think about what it was that really like pushed me in that moment to just like full send into the character. Which again was very sad. Like the players immediately had like a reaction to it. Immediately they were like, oh shit. Um, and like several players afterwards were like, hey, that was really cool, by the way. I really enjoyed that NPC. And like even when it was happening, there were people who were like, oh my God, fuck yeah. Which was so satisfying for me. I'm trying to think about what it is again that kind of like made that easily accessible. And I a part of it, and not to like say that it's like because it is skill, it is like practice. However, there isn't like anything I could tell somebody, I think. You know what I mean? To like, here's how you access this. I don't think there's anything I could like tell a DM that would suddenly give them that ability or that information. Because there was a second point that really opened this up for me, and that was so there was like the last part was I don't want to explain all of which like but the last part was like less of like an actual role playing and me explaining like a set of things that characters were seeing and adding some like emotional weight to the story, which with the hooks that which like gives you is not something that comes inherent to the story you're telling. For example, when you go with the lost things hook, it's the concept is a bunch of these characters have had something stolen from them, but it's not something like literal and physical most of the time. And most of the ideas they put forth in front of you are very lame. And so I kind of like molded over with players and we came up with something that was a little bit more meaningful, but some players hadn't still quite like there was not as much of an attachment as like other characters had to the thing lost. And as I've been like DMing this, there was a sense of like I I don't want it to I'm very good at like kind of spreading out attention equally among my players. And so I felt that energy and I didn't like it. I wanted to do something about it. And this was kind of like a really good moment for me to expand upon things. And so I had this thing that I dropped on one of my players. One of my players is a a Harengon who kind of like dual wields these two swords, and they are sentient swords. So they communicate through emotions and whatnot. And I didn't tell him this was going to happen, but in his backstory, he'd kind of been traveling with the carnival because he lost a sense after his like whole family dies and he doesn't have anything left to do. And he's kind of like lost all connections to the world. And the what he lost was like he still has the swords, but there's nothing attached to them anymore. And so through this adventure, he learns, and in this session is when he learned it, that it wasn't just they weren't ever just some magical sentience, like they are family members who had attached themselves through that. And I was able to kind of like flesh out that moment in which he came back to his family home burned and all his relatives dead, and drop this all on him, and uh in a really fun, interesting way. The thing is, and this is why I'm like, I don't know how I could like explain to somebody like what happened in this moment, is because it was all, I didn't plan any of it. I knew that I didn't like the way that Witchlight ran things, and I knew that I thought it was like very anticlimactic and like bleh. But I didn't know what I was going to do about it. And then the moment came where certain players would have gotten their thing back, and I decided I just didn't like it. And in the very moment it was happening, I went on like, it wasn't just like a little change either from the book. It was like a big thing that I can still tie around very easily. It's not something that I'm good at the improv while still staying cohesive. You know what I mean? And still making sure it makes sense and is feasible within the plot line and doesn't break the story too much. And that's kind of like what happened there. But part of it was also just like the language that I used was very different. And I let myself get dramatic with it, you know what I mean? And have that like emotion attached to what was happening. Even if again, I'm not terribly invested. Although I did have like one little moment where I was explaining something because I ended up having like every character find like a hint to where their thing was that is represented through this weird metaphorical like different like little magic things that they find. And it's all like every single one is like a personal representation. And then they also find ones that they don't know who this belongs to. They don't know what this is. This is something that was stolen from some other person. I could get really spooky and ominous with that. But so I did go through and I explained each and every single one as it was related to the characters and expanded upon this idea of things that they've already lost. Do you see what I mean? I put my hand out and she's like, "Oh, you're gonna pet me now?" No. But so there was the two aspects of just the ability to just like come up with something on the top of your head, um which I like to think that when I'm doing my own settings I will have to do that like a little bit less than reading something in a book and going, "Oh, I hate that, I have to do something about that right now." But then again, there's the aspect that I just kind of let myself fall into it. I think like I would partially take myself too seriously before and not want to just like get really dramatic and theater kiddie with it. And this time I was like, I'll just be the fucking theater kid. I'm just gonna be really dramatic about it. And they really like when you're dramatic about it.
So, couple of things. One of so on that last point, one of my maybe like not issues, flaws, I don't know. One of the things I struggle with as a DM is, especially in the kind of professional space, is, you know, technically we are not here for my fun.
Mm,
So when I make a story, they're very serious, and I tend not to inject a lot of fun into the games
mm,
inherently. And I try to change that here and there. I try to, in the last like couple of weeks or months, I try to do things that are more fun. But I think what it is, what you're talking about, I think I've identified it, is a as a central kind of binding idea, knowing what story you're telling, and not just like the plot, but like what is the like core emotion attached to everything here, and then having a setting that produces circumstances that lend themselves to that story.
mm,
Um, whether they be like the encounters or whatever. And so one of the best examples of me doing this very well and not having to put much effort into is my, but also it really depends on the players. So it's my Sunday, like my middle game on Sunday, the 6 p.m. EST one. So it's the Godlands. I'm not sure how much I've talked about this setting. For posterity's sake, posterity, for prostate's sake, I will explain it again. So the end of the Godlands is a story about 2 years after an apocalypse-like event where a bunch of devils break through into this ancient Greek esque setting and lay everything to waste. And you have all these disparate survivors, and it's about loss and grief and being separated from those you love and yada yada yada. I have 3 campaigns in this setting, and one of them is so consistently better than the other two from a GM standpoint, an emotional standpoint, all this stuff. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a combination of the setup and the players. I think it honestly, it does have a lot to do with the players. I love how the cat's just so much in frame. Um,
I kind of like spaced out while I was listening to you. I was just like, nothing was happening in my eyes. Just the words of what you were saying were popping up in my brain. Didn't even realize she was sitting here. I don't know what
um,
she wants.
who I mean, I we simply can't get into cat stuff now, but
Yeah.
so in this Sunday game, every 2 to 3 sessions, I have a moment where I am role playing something as an NPC, and I am like on the verge of crying. And this most recent session, there was this NPC who was related to one of the in one of the characters' backstories, and this is the first time they were introduced. Basically, you have these 2 brothers, and one of the characters was married to one, and then he kind of left the character 2 months before the apocalypse started. And the pitch for this character was very helpful to create a story very quickly, because when I made this in the session, I just had an idea. I don't even think I had written it down. I don't think I had written anything down for this session. I'll check that right now. I'll see what I've written down, if anything at all. Um, not a fucking thing. I had not written a single goddamn thing for this session. I was doing it completely um off the top of my head, but I had such a strong idea of what this story was supposed to be, and such strong players that it was just so easy. So I had this idea of this ex-husband. Anytime something gets hard, he leaves. He's great at everything until
Mm,
it's a genuine challenge, and he leaves. And in a world where there's a very challenging thing, he's probably been very cowardly. And so I don't know where this idea, when, or rather when this idea started, but at some point during the session, I had decided that the brother had left the other, like, so the brother was like the defender of his other brother, and the brother's family, and or the ex-husband was the defender of his brother's family.
Mm.
And when things got hard, he left, which resulted in the brother's family dying. And I had the scene where I had casually mentioned it in the session when she talked to the ex-husband of um oh yeah, we don't talk anymore, or we haven't talked in a while, something like that. And it wasn't really registered amongst most of the players. And then she, or the character, they um reached out to the brother, and the brother was like, yeah, I'm in the city where the characters were. And so they go out and they find the brother, and the brother's like just like trying to control everything, and you're just on edge, and like, stay here, please stay, don't go, everyone dies when people go, so you stay, and just trying to control everything. And throughout this scene, the amount of times as this character Jesse was about to be like like, just was so many times. And I think it's just such a I think it is a, like, a testament to a lot of the players, and how they built their characters into the storytelling of that setting, and that makes it so good. Because one of the things I kind of have been thinking about as well is how much difficulty I have with a lot of players in terms of trying to tell not even a cohesive story, but just a resonant story.
Mm.
Um, I There are just some players or some groups that don't quite, not even fit in, but don't strike the beat perfectly, and they don't need to. They're paying for an experience, they get their experience, and I do the
Mm.
best I can. But it does take tools out of your box as a GM when your players don't have the that level of accessibility or command or whatever it is. But so I think the skill to, like, train on to get good at this comes back to the map thing, that I was going to get into earlier. Um, so I've been painting a setting recently, Svednum. I sent you a picture earlier, and I've also been thinking about me socializing with real life human beings. And when people ask me what I do, I've been very aware for a long time that's a very hard thing to describe. Of like, I do D&D professionally. If you don't know what that is, and so I was like reflecting back on, like, well, where did I start? How did this all start? What's the like access point? And it's this. I think the skill is creation, is like connection and creation. So, for example, when I first started, um, uh, I had a thing that I needed to accommodate, which was I had all these characters, and I wanted these characters to exist in the same place. So then it's like, well, why does this? Sorry, brains constructing out the pathways to where this is going and connecting back.
Mm.
And I got real distracted by it for a second. So why is this here? Or why is that? Yeah, I got just reset. I had these characters. Why or how? There we go. Those are the right words. How are these characters all in the same place, and why? And so, well, I guess maybe there's this like new city, this like magical city that's been created, and all these characters have whatever reasons to kind of go on to a new direction in their life. So everything that I have built, or like maybe like 40% of my world, maybe 30%, comes from just the questions asked in relation to that, or extension thereof. For example, um, one of the characters was a Vidalcan. And so I had to ask, why is a Vidalcan here? Well, maybe there's a Vedalcan, whatever, civilization nearby. And there was also Dragonborn. I wanted to have Dragonborn in the setting. So I was like, well, maybe there's Dragonborn. Where do the Dragonborn come from? And I was like, well, I think there was a Vidalcan kind of civilization from here all the way up here. But I think the Dragonborn came in and took like most of it. So I think there's this like little war that's happening between these two sides. And that causes some like maybe some inherent tension with some people. So I think, anyways, I think this Vidalcan guy is like a veteran of that war and is getting away. And so that was the inception for the Empire of Ferudal, which is like one of the biggest like villain factions in my world. Anyway, so I think it comes down to getting good at answering questions when they come up, of having a and so I think it comes down to building out logistics. So the first, when you start creating and home brewing, it's very complicated and abstract, and you have to start on a very simple level, or you have to kind of restrict yourself,
Mm.
or whatever. You can't do everything. But at a certain point, um when you are creating, what's my brain doing? I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and see if I can circle back around. So Savednum, the new setting, newish. It's existed for a while as a concept in my head, and now it's being fleshed out just as a visual. And so what I have to go off of is vaguely seven-ish colors in this here, which I've decided are seven different lands. For those who don't know, land in my world is um it's not important actually. It's abstract. So I'm in the process right now of figuring out what kind of story I want to tell in this next setting. I know that the Sovietic Empire, the people who came from this land, conquered a bunch of different places. I know that they weren't good people. And so now I have to, as I place things in this land and paint things on the map, I'm making kind of almost like a call and response. Like I'll have an idea in my head of a general set of ideas that or themes or concepts that any of these lands need to slot into. And then I have um this empty space that I don't know what to do with. And so I'll paint something and then find a reason for it to be there. So for example, I painted this island that's not on the map otherwise. And I was like, I know that there are humans in this part of the in this land, and I know that the Sovietic Empire likes a unified kind of vision, and they like their ego. They like being more important than everyone else. And so on this island, I was like, I think, because a big part of the world is or in the history of the world, is this one event where the world kind of flooded. So I in my head, I was like, I think there was this human civilization in the edge of this land that got reasonably um, well developed and then mostly wiped out. But there's this like one city that is like the pinnacle of what they were. And so in my
Mm.
head, when they were united in the Sovietic Empire, I think the Sovietic Empire built a city on like one of the nearby islands that was like bigger and better, just to be like, by the way, we are still more important. So anyways, it's the skill that I'm trying to get to is I guess like making themed decisions,
Mm.
um and just recognizing how to like I do the to like connecting the dots very quickly, and it's a lot of improv, but I think it what I talk about a lot is just having a very strong like base and set of logistics that inform most of the things I do.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of get what you mean there. It's and not to pop off on it, well, we're just naturally good at it type silliness. But there definitely is like a sense of like when you're talking about like having a really good grasp of your themes and tying things together. I do know that it's something that I've always like done very well with, and particularly excelled at when it comes to like the way that I tell stories or even interpret them. Um, and so I think it's something like I think like what happened Monday was it was something that I already had skill in and I just figured out how to apply it to the game, you know? Um, and kind of like reach out and grab it in a moment, as I see it become available to me, if that makes sense. Um, wow, I'm tired today. But like so I do understand what you're saying there because I think that that is a part of what happened. um where it felt like I was just following threads that I'd put down.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also think part of my thought process of among the many paths was when you build out a setting. So when you build out a setting with intention, of having things be constructed around themes. So again, for in Actios, for example, in the sad setting, a player group walks into a city, and the city is like built to a scale that is hard to understand for our regular like real life human reference. They're buildings that are built for like devils and angels to walk into and to be amongst the people, and also built as sometimes skyscrapers and built in an ancient Greek style that are completely fucking empty.
Mm,
And so there's this feeling that gets communicated very easily of this isolation and this loneliness and this wonder that once was that has briefly been lost. And there's this like question because then there you have, as the story progresses, you get this thing where a couple of the cities now hold a very sizable number of survivors
mm,
that begin to fill the streets a bit more, but even then not to the scale. But you kind of see the momentum of that, and there's this kind of theme of hope and these other things. And with a good party and a good story, or not even that, with a good party, when you take the time to narrate in theme of just saying, here's what you see, and here's some inherent feelings with it that are you don't even need to state explicitly, but kind of picked up through the I don't know, whatever I'm trying to say here. um it becomes very easy, and almost just like you're almost like going, or I find myself in those sessions with that Sunday party almost going through the motions, but in a very like seamless and effective way, where
mm,
where everything that I have put here is like a great tool, and it doesn't matter what the players do, because the players are also like telling this story and have also made characters with the same set of tools, and it works very well
Mm,
together. Um,
yeah. Yeah. I think the tools thing is a really good way to put it. Um, there was something specific I wanted to pull it back to, but I couldn't um, remember. Because I'm sleepy. Because I'm a sleepy little guy. But I do think that the tools way, like the tools thing, is a really good way to put it. If all the tools are already there,
yeah.
it kind of doesn't really matter what direction it's going in. And that's kind of like what it felt like on Monday too. And not that the fucking book was the tools that I was using. um, at all, because Wild Beyond the Witchlight is kind of a dumpster fire. It's like it has so much potential for fun, so I see why it gets run. Like we're having a lot of fun with it. But and like I mean the way it's structured, the way it decides to give you information, like how it spaces, it's just like really messy and very hard to keep track of. I don't know who wrote that. It's like worse than Strahd, and Strahd also isn't a really good example of that. And somehow Wild Beyond the Witchlight manages to be worse. Um, but I like again like the following threads that I put down and like using tools that like I've already set out. Because it was like very seamless for something that I did. Like I hadn't even finished talking and setting it up before. Like I would just like keep kind of going and letting my brain take me wherever the fuck it was taking me. You know what I mean? And there was like I don't even think I at any point doubted what I was doing either. Like there was no point in which like, oh wait, does that like or does this make sense? Or is this is like it was just like with like the different ideas spouting off and me being able to kind of like continue to narrate the players into this space and present them with these ideas was very very seamless and I do think it is like a part of like me gathering all my little tools. I have so much more of them now. It just became like very easy suddenly. um but yeah, there's something to be said for that.
I'm I don't know if this is going to be a rant, but I'm going to go through a series of thoughts that are I'm trying to connect in my head. Specifically back on top, not even back on topic, that's not the right way to phrase it, but with the this Svednum setting in the Sovietic Empire, thinking back on so the way that they've been introduced into the game, into the story, is that all of the cities are in ruin. They are gone from the land, and within those cities is this brewing kind of evil that had taken the Sovietic Empire down. And through their absence, I guess really the story is set in this empire's absence. And the setting of Folia is a lot of the not even implied, but the natural story that gets told there is about the reclamation of culture. So, like for example, the thing that Santa has been kind of on about of learning about how things used to be and how the Sovietic Empire changed fully and all these things. So within the game, they're being set up to be these villains or the role that they have played in the world has been these villains who have fucked a lot of things up.
Thought
And
you were gonna end at fucked for some reason.
they just fucked. We're back on that topic. They be fucking.
Maybe
That's a
fucking.
callback to a previous episode. Um, but they so yeah, the reclamation of culture. Villains.
Fucked everything up.
They fucked everything up. Um, and so this sets a I guess a perspective for all of the Felian players that is going to have to be confronted with the Sovitic campaign. So two things need to be true. And I already kind of know what I'm going to do with this, but two things need to be true. The When the Felian players show up in Svedenham, they need to be able to recognize that the people who are surviving here are still the same people who did all those bad things and ruled over Svedenham.
Mm,
But also, um, in some senses, like maybe not even worth saving entirely. I think inherently, when with the people, there's need for change, but worth fighting for.
mhm.
And yeah, so that's I guess that's kind of the thing I've been like building out and working out in the like back of my mind for this setting. Um, yeah, so I want to maybe this is the topic, on this what's I don't know I don't know what the word for this is. And I'm pretty sure there is a word for this. And I do have a dictionary somewhere nearby. But the process of like expanding and following through on lines of logic in order to create a world. And so what I'm interested from you, because you've just had your first session zero of your professional GMing career, and you're most
Mhm.
likely going to have another one on Saturday.
Yes.
So as players begin to input into your world and give ideas, how are you managing, or like, is there anything you're thinking about or anything you've caught or you're able to reflect on in this moment of, I guess, discovery is one of the good words for it, or part of it. But anything you're noticing about the world building, or like as you build out the setting to accommodate this new campaign, I don't know, just any like thoughts, reflections, whatever.
Mm. Um, so that's kind of the thing, right? Is that I am a gardener at heart. I fucking stay pulling up them weeds and planting shit and all that. Um, and so a lot of what I do is like very malleable already. And I allow a lot of space for change. I don't like blank canvas it entirely and just let people go crazy, you know what I mean? However, I think it's a little bit easier because I'm starting like fresh, and so there is like there hasn't been too much done in this world already that I have to like stick to and make sure stays consistent. We'll see how that changes as I start running more games after the fact and as I get further in these campaigns, you know. But right now, right off the bat, it's very easy for me to like somebody has an idea that causes me to like make a small shift within the world. It's like not out of the realm of possibility. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's already happened. But again, I garden at heart. I am not an architect, nor will I ever be, I'm pretty sure. So, um, I was like almost convinced, right, that like when I started doing this, I was like that like a lot of my methods would change, and I'm sure some of them will, you know. However, I will say, I am still having like one of those things, right, where I was like, I'm not going to be able to have like long conversations with certain people about their characters. And I'm sure there will be a point in the future in which I'm not. But as of right now, I am still having long conversations with people about their characters and their backstories and whatnot, and sitting in call with people and all sorts of stuff. Um, very similar to what I've already been doing in like when I just DM for fun. And again, there are things that will change, and I know this. Um, However, I am still also in the spot of the world shifting around my players to sort of accommodate to them. I get a lot of satisfaction, like personally as a DM, when my players are satisfied, and usually what satisfies them is going to satisfy me. Uh, there are limits to this, of course. Like, for example, I'm not a huge combat person, so you could be having the most fun in combat, and I probably want to kill myself. However, when it comes to like role play and storylines and whatnot, what is satisfying for them is usually satisfying for me. I get a lot of joy from them having fun. Uh, I like I like watching other people have fun. I like that they're having fun because of something I did. And so a lot of like even my world building can really shift around my players, and the world will change based off of things that they want to see or they want to experience or something that they want a part of their backstory. Now, nothing has been so extreme as like with my Friday games where I literally made the world to accommodate their backstories. However, yeah, it is still a factor. Um, I plant things, I watch them grow, I see how it goes. It's the equivalent of me basically throwing a handful of mysterious seeds and I don't know what I have like a base idea of what they are. You know, they're all vegetables. What kind of vegetables? Who knows? Throw them in the dirt, see what happens, and we'll go from there. And I can do something with it. I'll still be able to make something out of it one way or another. I'll still be able to do something with that information and with those themes and so that's like I guess the big thing for me and the way that my characters can or like players can affect like my world building. Again, I'm a little squishy, malleable, little gardener with all my little seeds.
I'm someone, I think we've talked about this on the pod, on the apostrophe cast
Odd.
before. Um on the good old I'm gonna stop that bit immediately. I'm very rigid. I, especially to the scale that I do things at, I really and a reflection I had today. I get really tired of having to, when a player drops a backstory or an idea to me or gives to me, I get really tired of having to kind of take it and twirl it around and reform it and hand it back to the player as like, here's a new thing for you that's based off
Mhm.
of your idea. Um, Only I think because of the scale at which I need to do that, and the amount of information. I kind of get very tired from bad pitches,
Mm.
which is, you know, like, again, I'm being paid for this. So, you know, like, kind of have to deal with it. But I, yeah, I don't know if there's, what, anyways, I'm very rigid in my world building,
Mm.
and not in my world building, but my accommodation for players and my adjusting for players, because this world now has had two full length campaigns, almost three, run completely through them. And by July, it will have had 16 full. No, is that a right number? 14? Um, how does math work? Give me a second. Okay, yeah, 14 full length, start to finish campaigns run through the world
Mm.
with a set of logistics. And I think as I evolve as a storyteller, especially, and as I'm like preparing for June, July, August, and starting these new campaigns, I was having this realization that I was like, oh, some of these campaigns like I can't actually run. I
Mm.
like some of these campaigns, parties are like just not going to cut it. And so I think what I'm doing is, rather than having, because what would make my life a whole hell of a lot easier would be to have like six sessions in a row, say like Saturday, Sunday, same setting. So I don't have to go back and forth and think about stuff. But I think
Mm.
really what I'm gonna have to do is like go group by group and be like, which of these three campaigns do you best fit in? And I
Mm.
think the Bunky Kuel, because most of the characters I think to begin with are probably going to be stuck in Fulia, not moving on to Savedna.
Yeah.
Um, I think that is going to be like that post. Was I talking in the podcast or was that before? I don't know. I have this setting that is semi post apocalyptic. That's not really like about survival or anything. It's about like finding joy and silliness in a very macabre kind of dark tone,
Mm.
and just finding absurdity and oddity in this thing.
Funky Fuel loves to be silly.
Yeah, I think like that player group would be really good for that setting. Um, so yeah, I think yeah, I just need to like reorganize some things. Um, uh, it's just fine. Anyways, I got really distracted there for a second. We were talking about creation and stuff, and yeah, connecting. I feel like
The
I had a thing.
malleableness.
Malleability. Right. Yes. Rigidity. Thank you. My goodness. So I have so many campaigns that have run through the setting, or this world, this larger world, with that just keeps getting more complex from a base level. That I it gets harder and harder for me and more frustrating for me to take in new players who are not fully buying in. And again, it's whoever's right, who is paying for the session to play how they want. But also there is a certain point in which, if a player, and most 99% of the players that I have currently, don't have this problem. Like I was partially thinking of this because I had a player leave one of the games yesterday. I think, what day is it? Thursday? Yeah. And as soon as he left, as soon as I saw the message, I was like, that's kind of a relief, because he did not set himself up to participate in any kind of story or have the character
Mm.
idea was, I'm an artificer looking for uh, cool new metals. And it was like, uh, okay. Um, and like for example, so some of the other pitches for this setting, um, I am looking. This is one of Elijah's characters. I am looking for my sister who is gone here, and I am this really egotistical bard guy who yada yada yada. Another one from a player I quite like is my my child made a contract with a devil, and now in order to get the child out of the contract, I am stuck in this setting doing work for that like an associate of the devil. And so it's like these like emotional grounds into the setting, because the intention of the setting, so this is the Evans, the intention of the setting is, because it's very, very heavily homebrewed, and I don't expect anyone to enter into a setting like that and buy in that much, because it's like you need to know a bunch of random races that I've come out of my asshole, and a bunch of like politics, and there's no sense in trying to get someone that invested. So it's much easier to just have characters come in as adventurers from another land who get swept up in the politics
Mm,
and yada yada yada, and them having a they just come with a perspective or a some abstract tie, some goal that parallels the journey of this land, that the journey that you'll go through on this land. So anyways, um yeah, i I think in the future, what I was getting at here is I'm already deciding on how I'm going to manage new player intake in July, whenever it is that I'll be running these games. And I think for non new players, no, for new players, I'll just have a like Google form to fill out as like an application. Because one, on my start playing link, I have like either like 15,000 or 1,500 clicks. And that has not translated into that many players, obviously.
mm,
So what I realized is that going from hearing of a person to joining their game is a big thing. But going from hearing of a person to putting in an application and maybe reading some lore and then joining the game is a much more sensible process.
mm,
And so I think that's how I'm going to manage kind of new players, and maybe that's something that we'll talk about as well, of like trying to do for you, of because
mm,
a lot of people, because we have like 30, which 32 is not a whole lot, but 32 clicks on your, like 37 or something on your start playing link on my link tree. And I don't think any of those,
that means like 30 of you are cowards.
yeah, fucking pieces of shit. But yeah, like I think there's probably ways to like better manage the
Mm, mm,
translation of viewers on TikTok or listeners of the podcast to players at the table. Anyways,
mm.
that was a bunch of series of thoughts. I've been thinking a lot of things all the time.
A lot of things all the time. I do agree. I think that it's like, I mean, especially having been on the player end of this at some point in time, there was like a whole period of time where I'd known about you, but still had not joined a game. And it feels very intimidating to do so.
There's so many motherfuckers out there. This will be a clip. This Brandon clip. There's so many motherfuckers out there who were like asking about games, yeah, yada yada yada, doing whatever in the TikTok comments, or saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna join a game I just never heard from." And it's like,
Mhm.
fucking
Where are
cowards.
you,
I
you
got
little coward?
15 goddamn games on the sketch. At the time that most of these people were commenting, there were open slots in all of them. And now some of them are closed forever. Bunky Q off the menu.
You don't get to
The
be a part of that.
the game before that also off the menu, has 7 players. So anyways, there's still time, folks, to get in on these games. Um yeah, you know what else I've realized? And this is a thought. Sorry, actually, I'm gonna shut up for a second.
Oh,
I want to. I notice us talk a lot, and I don't like. I'm very prone to default to putting myself as the center of focus because I know how to, but internally I don't like it as a principle. So,
mm.
Tucker, is there anything you got on your mind you've been thinking about
Oh, my
D and
little
D wise
brain.
that you want to talk on your little brain,
Dude,
in
that
your
is
little
like
thinker?
trying to organize such a messy fucking box. It's been shaken or run around. It goes tossed up of a moving truck. It's a mess in there. It's a fucking mess.
Gotta get
I'm sure
those.
there's things
Mm,
where I've got to find them. I don't know. I got to reorganize them because there's just so much happening right now.
that's fair.
I was like, there was like a part of me that was like worried that I can't like invest myself like hard enough in something like that. Like in the sense of like I knew it was something I really like to do, but that I was like, oh, you're gonna like burn out super fast. And not to say that there won't be a point, because once I'm running more games than this, I'm sure there will be points where I'm like, the fuck, I'm tired. However, I was like, I'm gonna do one game and I'm gonna be too tired. Not true. I'm out here doing so much and getting real excited about things. I think I'm ready for it to be next week so that I can just start running the actual games. And though I felt like the session zeros were definitely like needed, you know. But my brain is very ready to go and put all of this messy box into something and do something with it instead of just being like kind of all over the place. Um, um, yeah, I'm trying to think interesting things to talk about D&D wise.
As you, I'll give you some. I'll give you some space to process there. Just in the topic of burnout, I think
Mm,
this is something that both of us do, which is I think we both think on like the macro. We think about the everything. And
mm,
so for example, if one of us has one thing to do in our day, that's the whole day. Like
yeah,
that, the whole
yes.
day is the anticipation of that. And something I'm discovering like over the past 2 days, because we're on vacation hours, baby, kind of, is compartmentalizing into moments. Like I had this thing where I have so much to fucking do. Tucker, I have so many things that I have to do.
Mhm.
And I want to get this Svedna map painted before um before July, where I'm gonna have a month. But then realistically, I'm gonna paint the Cthulhu Fragments map in that time, which is like 4 or 5 times the size. So Folia is 10 tiles. Svednum is like 14 to 16 tiles of like, again, they are like this big. You can kind of see that. 10 and so on average a detailed tile might take like 4 hours or so. The Cthulhu fragment, here's a game, Tucker. How many tiles do you think this circle is?
That circle,
That so
you
if
said
this is
Folia
10,
was
this
yeah.
is 10, and this is 14 to 16. This circle, how many is that?
Doesn't look like it could be that many more.
You'd be so
Move your fucking big ass head. Oh, okay. So maybe that's like 15. So that maybe is like maybe 18, 20. Maybe. I don't know. I'm bad at guessing.
so sorry, I'm actually counting them right now. I was anticipating around 20 when I first set out. I was like, this is going to be at least 20, maybe
Mm,
30, maybe possibly 40, because it's not every tile is 100% fragments. So there's a lot of like outlier tiles that are like 10%, like this like outer
mm,
darker rim. Anyway, so I'm counting them. They're on my shelf. I realized they're right there. I was going to give you an estimated number, but I can get specific. So I'm going to disappear again.
Okay. Goodbye.
So two of these tiles are one is attached to Folia and one
Mm.
is attached to Savednum. But including those two tiles, 54.
Oh my God. It's too big. Make smaller.
So that setting, I want to run every single campaign I have scheduled just for like however long it's going to be, just in that setting. And instead of everyone being on the same side, it's like a civil war. That's like
Mm.
real. It's like end of days, like a period of time where by the end of this war, like most of the people in this goddamn place are dead. Anyways, burnout,
Burnout.
compartmentalizing, even just so back to the story. I can't believe I'm back on track. Remember, think about D&D stuff you want to say after this.
Mm.
Um, Wednesday night. So I run a game Wednesday morning. It's the one that I'm not super awake for. I don't feel good the whole day generally, but I have so many things I want to do. I wanted to get this map painted, and I guess I did start that yesterday because it's still the same day, isn't it? Um, but I was just like I was feeling the hole, and I was tired, and I was like, I just need to rest. I just need to make a choice because sometimes it's like you feel obligated to behave a certain way in your day, and you need to make like little choices to break those obligations.
Mhm.
So I made a choice to just be like, I'm gonna sit on the couch, I'm just gonna close my eyes, and I'm just gonna lean, I'm just gonna take like maybe a nap, maybe just rest a little bit.
Mm.
I did that, and then I was like, I'm gonna get something to eat. I'm just gonna do something. And I did that, felt a little better, a little better. And then by the end of the day, I was starting like a Marvel movie marathon, um, and um, painting, and but just that like a little bit of rest and like sleeping last night and this morning, and just like not having obligations, just like little bits of rest.
Mm.
How rejuvenated I already am, and even though I don't really have the best schedule for my break, like I Saturday I work all day because I'm accommodating um, rescheduled things, and
Mm.
I have plans on the 18th that you know I had to move sessions for, and then Tuesdays I'm still working, and Sunday I'm going up to a different city to do this like best man thing, and Wednesday I have 3 1 shots that I want to run just to get a taste of those settings, to have some different D&D. I have all these
Mm.
things, and then the painting, and then working on lore and Patreon stuff, and yeah, whatever, fucking everything. But just that little bit of rest felt so much better.
Mm.
Um, so it really is like a really difficult thing to manage. Um, but I find this job to be, it can be very gratifying. And I don't think I ever, even with the bunkie fuel sessions, for the most part, I don't feel rejuvenated after running them.
Mm.
Sometimes there's like an energy high and it feels good, but there's still some kind of deficit. But
As I say, after most, it doesn't matter for me. It usually doesn't matter how good the D&D session was. I'm tired after. Even on like a casual for fun, I'm running it for my friends. It could have been a really great session. I'm tired afterwards.
um but yeah, so it's recovery is like hard to manage. But I also have a 13 to sometimes 14 games a week, um, which is really challenging. Um, anyway, so that's the end of my burnout rant. D&D thoughts.
D&D thoughts. I don't know. I think I'm kind of anxious. Um, I think about I'm like existing in this place of like I'm fine. I know I'm gonna be fine, but there is like an underlying anxiety about the whole thing. I think about doing it for money. There's like something about my Friday games where like if I don't know, if there's I can just be like, shut up. I'm doing this, and they'll be like, okay, it just doesn't matter. They're not paying. You know what I mean? We're just
Mhm.
friends, but there's like an aspect of like the paying for it that I think that I'm a little anxious about, like being able to make the money worth it, you know? Um, and then I also already kind of like talked to you about how there is something that is anxiety inducing about having people who've been playing a lot longer than me in my games. Um, Not that I don't want them, by all means, I love that you're there. I I'm just a little anxious about it. I'm used to being I think part of it is because okay, so by the end of my time at Starbucks, I was really slacking off with it, right? But for a large period of time at Starbucks, I was very good at what I did. I was incredibly quick. I could bar circles around bitches, like I knew a lot about my job. I was very good at my job. I was very good. I was good at all of it. I was very good at what I did. And there's something about going 5 years in a job that you were very, very good at to something that you're new at with people who know considerably more about it than you do, even though you're in the DM spot. That's just kind of like intimidating, you know? And
I
it's a lot.
I don't. So here's my perspective. Um, I think for me, I never experienced this, and one of those players who has like a significant. So David, who we mentioned like a week or two ago as well, who has like 40 years ish experience.
Yeah,
He's
David said
been
that he's been playing since the 70s, I think.
70s, so like 45, 50 years.
Yeah.
Um, is I have a very specific style of game, and I have a very specific world, and I have all these things that I claim domain over in a sense. And I think to some extent I was also like told a lot that by like the people in my games how like good I am. And I feel I do. So here's a quick brain word. I think something I struggle with, definitely, as we mentioned earlier, the session I run on Wednesday, I didn't feel super great about it. I have at least 2 sessions a week that I don't feel super great about. That I was like, I could have done that better. But I think it is the I'm always thinking about how to do things better. I'm always improving. I'm
Mm.
always it because it's my job. And I think that I almost never take direct feedback personally, and most of the time people don't even give direct feedback, but like for example, because a lot of people, I have this new player in my Sunday game, and the last session we had, he was like, oh, I'm still figuring out my character, and I my wish is that he as the player, his own wish was for him to figure it out. And I was like, I could do a lot there to help you. I just haven't had time, and that's on me to like to not to invest that energy into you as a player.
Mm.
There's always things I'm missing, and but it's I think overall my games are still good though, right? And they're my games, and I don't know. I'm seeing a bunch of things here. Um, yeah, I think I also never experienced it because like from the get go, I had this moment. So there's this. Here's just a little lore drop for Jesse about my experience in getting to professional GMing. When I figured out this job was a thing I could do, I was like certain that I needed to do it. I was like, this has to be my life. Here's another clip, Brandon. I knew, I was almost 99% certain that GMing in some, if I could get paid for it, that this should be my life.
Mm.
Um, I was certain. And so maybe you don't have that. But there was this song, and it's a really silly song. Well, it's a good song. It's the song's not that silly at all, but it's by a very silly artist, Little Dicky.
Mhm.
So he has this song called Russell Westbrook on the Farm. And I don't know sports lore, but I guess Russell Westbrook is a good basketballer. And the idea of this song, because Little Dicky went through school for like marketing or like business something,
Mhm.
and one day started like rapping and was like, "Oh, this is my shit. This is like what I'm good at. I feel like I'm meant to do this." And in a similar sense, so he uses Russell Westbrook on a farm of like just living a regular farm life, and one day he discovers a basketball court and suddenly he's this incredible person. um and he feels this calling, and that song, is just generally a well written song. Lil Dicky's he's pretty good. Um but I was like, this also, I this song is about me. Like I this is exactly how I feel. Like everything in my life makes so much sense leading up to this moment to be a professional GM,
Mhm.
that I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna do it. And most of the feedback I got early on from players was good. um yeah, so I mean that's my experience. As you like approach this space of professional GMing, like because you're doing it partially, I think, out of necessity, um because Starbucks sucks.
I suck.
But like paired with that anxiety, like
It's
I
it's
don't.
not necessarily like first of all, it's not discouraging enough. I'm not like there's like a part of me that's like, all right, Tucker, shut the fuck
Mm,
up. Because I've never gotten bad feedback. That being said, I am like self-aware enough to know that like I've always DM'd for my friends. None of they're lying to me. I have a lot of friends who are the type of people who tell you what they think about something right off the bat, but it's more in the sense that I know them. I know what they like and I know what they want to see and I know what they're going to enjoy. Um, but like here I'm in a situation where I have to kind of like figure a person out first. Um, and also we've talked about, me and you at least have talked about this before, where I have this terrible thing called, if it's not perfect, I don't want the world to see it. Um, and that can be like difficult for me at times to kind of like put myself out there, and not even necessarily because of other people's criticizations, but because of my own, you know? Um,
criticizations.
Curtis, shut the fuck up. I am so tired. Keep your mouth shut. Um,
I A lot of the time,
criticisms,
the me
whatever.
as a
I'm big
person,
sleepy.
me as a person, I had this moment. I was hanging out with my friends last week, and um so I'm supposed to meet a mutual friend of theirs, and when we were talking about it, my friend was like, "Oh, she got a haircut," and didn't say anything else, but sort of implied that might affect the outlook. And in my head, I was like, it took me a couple of seconds to process, and it was like, maybe, the moment had passed, but I realized I was like, oh, you don't like your friend's haircut. And I had this little moment of like all of these kind of subtle realizations or thoughts or unspoken things that are constantly kind of in the back of one's head that you can have funny little bits out of. And so criticizations was one thing where I made an active choice to be like, I would usually let this slide, but I don't want to.
That's for you. It's a
Oh,
gift.
it's for
This
me.
is also going in the box.
It's going to your middle finger is going in the box.
I'm sending it to you.
Oh God. You're gonna banshees of Inisherin me. Um, so you were saying about anxiety and
I'm also just an anxious person.
yeah.
I also just have an anxiety
Mm.
disorder, which is an unfortunate thing that makes me anxious about a lot of things that I probably just don't need to be anxious about.
I
But again, I've been doing the same thing for 5 years it wasn't just like, oh, 5 years and I'm like 36. 5 years since I was 18, like freshly 18. And that changes things. I am self-aware enough to know that like that changes things, like coming out right out of the gate as a fresh adult. And I moved out very quickly after the fact too. And doing the same thing for 5 years from the impressionable age of 18 means quite a lot.
mm,
You know, when you think about like how long I've been alive and a part of the adult world and been functioning on my own, doing the same thing for so long, and then switching it up is it's a lot for me. And it's something that's a very normal experience. And then I'm sure when I'm older, I'll be like, haha, stupid little baby
yeah.
Tucker, stupid little baby man. But now, as a 23-year-old, I'm like, oh God, this is scary.
I mean, I won't like. I've talked about this before, and I never know at this point what's been said on. I've definitely said this on TikTok, but when I was getting into professional GMing, I was like, I am such an idiot. This is the dumbest idea. I simultaneously being like, this is absolutely what I had. This is my calling. And I'm so fucking stupid for trying to pursue it. But
That
I
was the
ha-
thought that I also immediately had. Because here's the thing, before Starbucks started being shitty, that one
Mhm.
had looked at me and was like, you could always try professional jamming. You'd probably enjoy it more. And I was like, that's dumb. I was already playing in your game, so I knew like logically it's like a thing you can do. But for me personally, I was like, that's stupid. I'm not doing that. That's a dumb boy idea. Dumby.
um
He was right.
the oh, my players, so circling kind of back around a little bit. Um I'm trying to, so okay, or let's sort of thoughts here. Let's finish the first one. I thought I was a
Getting
fucking
ahead of
idiot.
yourself.
I yeah, I was going in a bunch of different directions. I thought I was so stupid. And then I just started working and it was fine. I but like session to session, I not every session is perfect. And I definitely used to be someone who is like needs to be perfect. Like especially with music. I was working on a project for, so I had this project where I wanted to release like an album, and I had to sing on it. I had to be all me. So I took singing lessons for like 2 years before I started recording, and I had one line that I put, and to be fair, it wasn't an easy line. I didn't make it easy on myself because when I'd written the songs, I wasn't a singer. So when I put myself in a position where whatever. Um, I shit you not. I put 700 takes down, and that's not uncommon. 700 takes down on like one line. I just couldn't get it right the way I wanted it. So I've felt that before. I've never felt that with D&D though. Because I think D&D is, to me, it's always been about like sitting in like the pocket. And again, like it's built off of all these series of logistical things, and so it just, and this whole world has all this complex weave of all this shit that makes it easy for me to run. um and yeah, even like my, I had this thought earlier while we were talking, while I was talking, that my players, in my Barty campaign, um none of them, when it started, I guess two of them were like kind of my friends a little bit. Two of them were completely new. One of them had kind of joined two games of mine and then immediately left one of them. But I was like pretty sure I wanted to be friends with. Um, anyways, I wouldn't consider any of these people like the typical friend of like they have to be in this game and they um have to be in this game and they have to tell me that I'm good, you know?
Mhm.
But I think that campaign was pulled off almost perfectly for like maybe 80% of it. It's been a me doing a very, very good job of putting down sessions, interesting ideas, themes, or whatever in front of the players, and also just having a good party to engage with that as well. Like that is always the biggest like blocking point or obstacle in having a good game is the alignment between the party and the DM. Um, and the only reason all of my games aren't fucking incredible bunky cool level where we're crying every session and I'm having scenes with NPCs talking to each other is because every party just has a different series of needs. Um, but I've always like from running the campaigns that I have run, I've always been very confident of like, because I never had self confidence. It didn't come internally. I was just so consistently told, and I was never trying to be. I think here's the thing. Here's the idea that came into my head earlier. That is, I think, very like braggadocious of me, which I think is a real world word. Is I was always good. I didn't have to try for it. People just love my games, and I think, you know, people I think talk a lot, and I think it's very true of if like good people run good games because GMing is a service.
Mhm.
Fundamentally, it's accommodating people's wants and needs and trying to give them a fun experience. It's not a, and I think my personality has always been very aligned with that. And I mean, in my storytelling, like, I'm so, nothing is set. Like the amount of times I'll let, you know, one player make a decision that might impact the rest. Like I um multiple times I you can trace like maybe 3 to 4 events in Folia that a player has made such a smart choice or had a good plan or good roles or whatever that has changed the outcome of events for the whole story, and is although for many parties right now feels like the it is very dangerous and very grim, but ultimately is most likely going to have some semblance of a happy ending. I was there was a long point in time, or a large portion of time, where I was pretty sure that by the end of the Fleeing campaign, Flia was going to be in a period of like basically post-apocalypse, where the country had somewhat burned down, and there are these little pockets of like, or like large pockets of survivors, but they've all kind of grouped up. And because of player choices, that direction has shifted. Um, so all that to say, I've always been, despite almost every other, like me and almost every other situation would not be like this, but for GMing, I've almost always been like, I'm just good at this. Um, and my players recently, that same Barty, um, I had this weird moment where I did have a disconnect between what they were saying and what I think of myself, because I tend not to really, like, outside of this conversation, outside of feeling it, I don't often look at um my whatever, my jamming style, whatever, my storytelling ability, and think, oh, I'm great. But I look at what I've done, and I go, that's great. And
Mm.
because the players had a good time, and you know, I guess the dots are connected. But my Barty was asked me if I would ever GM a season of Dimension 20. And I was like, I don't need to think about that because it's never going to happen. Why would they have me? And they're like, because you're such a great storyteller, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, I, I don't think so. I'm good. I know I'm good. I don't know if I'm like world class actual play good.
Mm.
I think as a player, I could deliver a heart wrenching performance. It's so much easier to be a player and to have horrible little emotions, the character, and be flawed and everything. Um, but GMing, I don't. Anyways, so all is to say, I pretty good and sexy and smart, and people should join my games, but your games first, but also my games,
But also, but both.
both.
Just do both. Don't be a little coward. Do both.
Yeah,
Yeah, just do both. Sorry, my head's a little empty tonight, I'm realizing. I'm a little silly. It's empty and so full at the same time.
it's full of like, what's the word, like half constructed thoughts that lead to other
Yeah,
things outside of the conversation. Yeah.
yeah.
Last
It's
thing
a lot
I'll
of thoughts about like players and their
Mhm.
characters and stuff like that, and not much thoughts about anything else. Actually, I didn't expect it to feel this exhausted after the fact. I'm usually not this tired. I think it's because I did a lot of other shit today.
I think it's
Um,
also probably
yeah,
just a build up for you of
yeah. Sitting around waiting.
mhm,
Now I'm
mhm.
here. And then after Saturday, I'm gonna sit around do some more waiting, and we'll see. But
Well, we can, that's a fair point then, on
we
a,
can have a reasonably sized episode this
we had a
time.
reasonably sized episode, hour and 30 minutes,
Oh my God.
um ending it on a note
Brandon
of
would be so happy.
ending it on a note of me being like, yeah, I'm pretty good. I don't know.
I mean, if it makes
um
you feel any better about you bragging, I also think I'm pretty good.
good, okay.
I just haven't had like, look, I think I'm pretty good. If that doesn't stop the little thing in my brain, the little anxiety guy for being like,
Mm,
I don't know, fuck you. But like logically, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty good.
yeah. Oh, sorry, last thought. I thought
Last
this a
thought.
long time. So you're talking about players being, having more experience than you. Two-thirds of my players have more experience
Mm.
than me. I've only been doing this for 4 years. I've just been really committed to it. Um, anyways, you've been playing D&D for longer than I have, I think.
I don't know about that. I think
Four
we
years?
actually might be like pretty matched.
Okay.
as far as
Neither
how
am
long we've been playing D&D.
I.
Technically, I had played something that wasn't D&D
Ooh,
6 years ago when I was a teenager. I don't know what it. Oh, you know what? I should ask David because I bet he knows what I played. I bet if I described it to him, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's whatever." I can't remember its name, but it wasn't D&D. It
hmm.
was something else. Something about plant people and robots. Apocalypse. Giant rabbit. I don't know. David, I think you watch these. Tell me in the comments if you know what
Yeah.
the fuck I'm talking about.
David's
um,
a supporter.
yeah. Shout out to David.
So to David. Second shout out in 3 episodes.
Yeah,
Um,
there we go.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah. So, but I think I've actually been similar time to you. However, there was something about like when I started DMing that like my life very quickly became like engulfed. Even before I started doing paid DMing, I was thinking about D&D all the time. I was
Mhm.
talking to people about D&D all the time. Like even outside of it, when I'm with my friends, we talk about D&D. It's like, but um, but no, yeah, I don't know. Well, here's the thing. I think it's also like I it's like one thing like Jack. Jack's been playing D&D longer than me. Jack's around my age. I'm not intimidated by you. Jack, I know you're listening. I'm not intimidated by you. You can't
We're
do
not
anything to me.
scared of you, Jack, or your cat.
um, no, it's like I guess it's also like a little bit the age thing. Not again, it's not that I mind playing with like it doesn't matter to me. I think it's more of like a or maybe it's a little bit that I'm used to older people being like very condescending to me in most situations that I'm just kind of like my subconscious is like prepping for you to just like say some underhanded shit to me because that's how it's been in like the jobs that I've had and like even before Starbucks the two jobs that I held but like even 5 years with Starbucks of like especially in a manager position people who are older than you and below you and like position at work love to they hate that you're a manager. They hate that you're 20 and a manager and they're like 37 and a barista. It pisses them off. They can't stand it. I've met some people who are obviously didn't have this thing. They were like fucking chilling. It did not bother them at all. But I've met so many people who have like such a deep seated like it makes them upset and they're gonna be mean to you and they're gonna be condescending to you. And so I don't know. I guess I just don't like have a lot of experience with older people not being jackasses towards
Mhm.
me, but I'm sure I'll get proven like prove fucking God. I'm sure you know what, David, you'll prove me wrong, okay?
Yeah, David, like
David, you're gonna be the one.
I when I first had my sessions, because he was one of my first players, right?
Oh,
When I first had my session zero with
I had a
him,
feeling because I remember when I first got in there and somebody would ask a question and David would respond and be
mm,
like, actually, the lore is, and I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
yeah, and he was so we talked about him before about him just being able to buy in. Like he really, for like my world personally, he like really loves the world and has probably read through like most of the what's it called, the Fleet Adventures Network, and it's just in it. um and so like when I first met him, when I first ran, because I would, at that time I was running session zero, like one on one, and I was like, okay, he's like an older guy, but he's like very nice, and there's absolutely nothing that was concerning or displeasant about the interaction, which
Mm.
you can't say about everyone that you're going to meet. Some people just will rub you the wrong way, yada yada yada. Dave was nice, and he's like very excitable and happy to like be playing D&D, and um yeah, but being older, I was like, let's see how it goes, and he's been um one of the easiest players to have in my games. He isn't, like my favorite. He's not like a an Elijah the Younger, only because like Elijah the younger can cry as his characters 2 sessions in a row. Like Elijah the Younger has
Mhm.
a like special talent to engage in D&D that just isn't seen amongst all players, and to have like a party full
Elijah's
of,
a special case.
yeah. Um
We
but
can't all aspire to be Elijah,
yeah,
okay?
like if every one of my players was like David, I would have no problems.
Mhm.
If everyone one of my players was like David, I every game would be gratifying and enjoyable to uh run, and there'd be like no worries at all.
You hear that,
Um,
David? I have high expectations of you.
yeah. The only thing that you need to know about
You better
David is
bring
that
it to the
he
table.
he likes his items. He calls himself a gear whore
He
all the time.
asked in this session 0, he was like, how do you feel about items? And I was, I think I gave him an answer that was satisfactory. I was like, oh, absolutely. Like, just as long as I look at them and I'm like, yeah, then we're good. I'll give you little items. Um, so I picked up on that very quickly.
I hope he gets a little bit of joy of us talking about him. But I had another note that I was gonna wrap up with. I like how we were like, yeah, it's probably time to end it, and then
I'm
we
sleepy.
whoopsie daisies. Um, Instead of trying to find that note that I was going to do another tangent on for 5 to 10 minutes, I'm gonna give you a break. I'm gonna get back to painting and
Yeah.
my Marvel marathon. But this has been the Story of the Apprentice podcast. Again, in case you missed it the first time, because maybe the beginning of each episode is a little chaotic and tangential. Um, it's a story about. It's a podcast about D&D and storytelling, and it's the story of little fucker Tucker here becoming a professional GM and shit. And I am one of the hosts, Jesse T. William.
I'm Tucker Patterson. Definitely not distracted, hitting my vape. I would never do
um,
that.
Now, so my first thought was we say goodbye and we end the podcast, but I feel like that's just not our